Gonjasufi, muzzle. Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Nice to meet you. It's time for an album review. Gonjasufi, muzzle. Gonjasufi is an MC, singer, and producer who's been turning heads ever since he landed as a guest vocalist on the Flying Lotus album Los Angeles, which led him to get signed on Warp Records to release his debut album, A Sufi and a Killer, which was one of my favorite albums of 2010, and to this day I have difficulty finding words to accurately describe what this album is. It's kind of a weird mix of soul and hip-hop and lo-fi music and electronica and noise and funk and Middle Eastern music, punk and psychedelic rock. It's just a mess. There are so many songs on here, it just kind of uses being a mess as kind of a concept. Now, after a remix album of that LP and a new EP, we have Muzzle, which is 10 new tracks, 24 minutes, kind of a short mini album, and a slightly new direction. First off, Gonjasufi is not working with the Gaslamp Killer on this one. He's taken it upon himself to pull the recording and the beats together. And you have a lot of lyrics on these tracks that kind of deal in social overtones. And this stuff to me has kind of led to a release that is a little bit more in control of itself. If A Sufi and a Killer was kind of like this auditory binge, then this is definitely, in comparison, much more focused and sober. I'm not saying this album isn't loaded with trippy and psychedelic sounds, because it is. Like on the song Feedin' Birds, you have these duet vocals that sound like they're being sung through McDonald's drive-through speaker boxes with lots of reverb on them. Watery and reverb guitars just shattering away in the background behind them. There are all these swirls of just ghostly vocals and electric piano on the opening track, White-Picket-Fence. There's some mutated King Crimson samples on here with Rubber Band and Skin, and some deep, dark bass and an eerie atmosphere surrounding the track Venom. Kind of like his last LP, Gonjasufi comes up a little short when it comes to presenting songs, but when it comes to putting sounds in his album, he's ahead of the curve. Tons of sounds and colors and textures flowing throughout this thing. Each song on here is kind of like a starburst. Nom 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 nom. Not a really long lifespan, but just an explosion of flavor. Which to me is kind of especially true of tracks like the intro track and the outro track, which to me kind of only seem to exist to throw some weird sounds out there. Songs like Black Suit and Skin and Time Out, they're a little meatier, but I kind of feel the same way about them too, because the beats behind the tracks, just the whole track in general, just feels a little repetitive, kind of runs in circles. But those tracks, a lot of tracks on this LP, don't really last all that long. And while that keeps them from getting really annoying to me, they don't exactly stick with me. They're not really packing a punch, and many songs on here don't really throw out ideas that haven't already been thrown out by A Sufi and a Killer. There are a few darker beats on here, and I do like that duet on Feedin' Birds. But if it weren't for the fact that Gonjasufi has such a unique voice that he's always changing up with different breathing styles and pitches and inflections and effects, I think I'd be pretty bored with much of this album. There are some songs on here though that kind of seem to come together with a really strong song, hook, and sound. Like The Blame, which has this very dark beat and these strange little synthesizers just kind of droning away in the background, and the lyrics kind of tell this story of violence and murder and maybe even kind of killing for your beliefs, and also shame. And the song Nickels and Dimes too, which is kind of about leading a wasteful lifestyle, and one should do his or her best to avoid that. And I really like how that track kind of transitions into the song Rubber Band. And, you know, if we are going to get less material, I at least wish that more of the tracks on here did that, you know, just so everything didn't feel so disconnected. On this new LP, I think Gonjasufi is still pushing an original sound. I'm happy he's been able to maintain it while kind of relying on himself more to pull this music together. Muzzle is definitely a little more cohesive, but I think, you know, the way that Asufi and the Killer jumped around just so boldly is part of what made that album so fun. It kind of like short-circuited my brain. In contrast, Muzzle kind of feels like the same drug that I've been taking, but it's just not as strong as it used to be. Overall, I'm still addicted to Asufi and the Killer, but if this is your first hit of Gonjasufi, you know, just try it. Maybe it'll freak you out and get you to see colors. I like this thing, but only a little. Kind of feeling like a strong 6. Just would have liked to have more variation in the beats, longer songs, more songs, newer sounds. But what do you think of this thing? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Why? And what should I review next? Anthony Fantano, Gonjasufi, forever.